We raised $7.5 million for this acquisition to buy 144 units. What I'm going to share with you guys will work for you if you apply it the way I'm showing it you within the first 5 days. All of this is going to break down into the target system I'm going to walk you through now. This skill set is literally why I'm on this stage. It's why I've been on other stages. It's why I've had the good fortune of getting to know Ken Macro over the last 20 plus years. The picture over there is a property that Ken owns to this day. It's called the Fountains at Sun City. I raised $5 million for that deal. That was the first deal I did in private equity, and that was Ken Macro's deal. So I've had the good fortune to get to know this man for the last 20 plus years, and it's because I know this skill set so well. So I want to make sure you guys leave here with that framework, because this skill will open doors that you've never potentially imagined. So there's two ways for you guys to build your brand. The first way is what I call the long way. And you might recognize it as when people say things like, people are going to see my actions. The results are going to speak for themselves. And look, that's all fine. This is all great. That's actually the long way, the sustainable way to build a brand. The problem is it's going to take you 5, 10 plus years. MC Companies has been 20 plus years in the business, and they're a fantastic brand, but it's 20 plus years. So how do you shortcut that process? That's what I want to give you guys. I want to reverse that for you guys here today. So the way that I want to show you guys here is something that I literally created, and it's called the target system. And it's a new way for you guys to be able to raise capital post-COVID in the economy here today. And you can use it to raise capital for your projects. You can use it to find new clients. You're going to be able to use this for a lot of different ways. And this strategy is literally what's allowed me to raise over 200 million plus 300 million institutional capital. And to this day, 6, 7 plus figure investors, some of them that are in this room, that have literally come to me because of this strategy. And that's what I want to share with you guys here today. And the craziest part is a lot of these people come to us to work with us even before we have a deal. So a lot of you, if I was to do a poll, a lot of you think you need the deal first to then go out and build the interest, right? The problem with that is you've already lost if you've done it that way. Anybody who's a commercial broker that's selling, if you're the seller and the buyer comes in and you ask for proof of funds and they say, I'm going to go get it, I promise. Well, what's your credibility like? It's probably somewhere down here, 0, right? So that's another thing. I'm going to show you guys how the last building that my partner Raymond and I bought, we paid and we got a $5 million discount because we had the cash in the bank. And we did that legally. We legally raised the capital before we had the deal. So the secret in all of this is literally the ability to capture, convert, and nurture your leads. And it's going to work for you because you're literally, by definition, you're attracting your ideal investors or clients through your specific steps based on the experience that you guys have. So another concept I'm going to share with you is your unfair advantage and how to be able to package that so that people are literally showing up, like I said, asking, how do I get in? When? As opposed to, tell me more. And by the way, a lot of you guys do this to yourselves because you're literally using the deal as a crutch. Like literally you flog the deal as if that's what's going to make or break that transaction. But the problem is you commoditize yourself by doing that because now you're comparing one widget against another. I've raised well into 9 figures in private capital, and rarely have we started with, by the way, here's the deal. Do you want to invest? Rarely, if ever. What I'm going to share with you guys will work for you if you apply it the way I'm showing it you within the first 5 days. And it's not going to require you guys, before I get into it, to spend hundreds of hours networking or taking meetings that literally go nowhere. So, let me know if any of these look familiar. Some of your networking events, or maybe some of the conferences you guys have attended in the past, you're feeling of this, like this, maybe even like this. This. Look, you guys get it. There's a better way. And you're going to be able to attract new investors, even if you don't have a brand, a website, you don't know anything about marketing strategies. It'll work for you if you've never even heard of digital marketing before. If you think Facebook is this thing you just go and check with your friends out, that's fine. I got you. This will literally work for you. I'm going to take the next few minutes. I'll show you guys my specific frameworks that literally you can apply without any new skills. Now, for context, this is the property that my partner Raymond, who's sitting in the audience, and I actually bought together. We raised $7.5 million for this acquisition to buy 144 units. And we use this exact process that I'm going to share with you guys. And literally because of that, we were able to do it without having one-on-one meetings with people that were not qualified. We didn't do any networking events, brunches, dinners, or lunches, or any of this stuff. And we didn't have to spend money on any expensive sponsorships or any of this stuff. And the best part, like I mentioned to you guys, is we were able to raise the capital before we had the deal. So imagine that, no brochure for a deal, and people were bought into the philosophy of what we were doing even before we had the opportunity. And because of that, we had massive negotiating power. You know, literally we're dealing with the seller and they're like, yeah, we don't like your price. I'm like, well, here's the bank account. Well, we like your price very much. Thank you very much. You know, well, obviously they didn't want to take the discount, but if you can't close, it doesn't matter what it says on paper. So that was a big piece. And that, like I said, that saved us, you know, just over $5 million. All of this is going to break down into the target system and walk you through now. And target stands for tribe and TAM. There's over 24 million accredited investors in the United States. There's another 17,000 private equity funds and family offices. All of them are looking for places to invest. All of them. It's literally their job. That's what they get paid to do. So there's no shortage of investors, but there is a massive shortage of deals packaged in the right way and shown to the right people. That is literally the biggest problem in the industry. You can have ice and try to sell it to an Eskimo. It's not going to work. You can take that block of ice and go to the beach and you're still not going to sell it because it's not packaged correctly. But if you break that ice down into popsicles, you're going to make tens of thousands of dollars that day. You guys understand? So packaging your deal, it's not just showing it to the right people, but also packaging it in a way that people say, yes, makes sense. How much can I get in for? That's literally the job of somebody that's raising capital. And then the selling part is just the byproduct of everything else. So to grow our database to 70,000 people, we had to do a few things. Number one, we had to audit our network. Two, we had to create our ideal investor avatars. And three, we had to create a specific outreach strategy for each one of those groups. Now, for you guys, you're going to have 5 different types of groups that you're going to probably identify. Your first one is your core champions. Your second is your industry allies. Third is your mentors and advisors. Fourth is your online community. And fifth is going to be your admirers or your passive supporters. And I'll show you how to leverage all of them over the course of this presentation. The second piece is your attention and leads. So there's 2 platforms, and I'm really passionate about this piece because, you know, I'll walk you guys through it. There's platforms you own, and there's platforms you borrow, other people's platforms. So here's exactly what we did with platforms we own, and you may be familiar with some of these. We did live events, we did webinars, we did Facebook groups, online challenges, evergreen lead funnels, and in my spare time, because we had so much, I obviously wrote the book. Now, here's the thing. I've literally spent over $1 million in hard costs doing all of this. And you know what I learned through that entire process? It wasn't what I did so much as that was important nearly as in what order that I actually did it in. Does that make sense? So it wasn't the activity, but it was the order of the activities that actually had a bigger impact on what I was doing. As an example, here's one of my best performing sequences that it still to this day attracts investors on autopilot. And I'm going to walk you through why it works the way it does. Now, when I got the order right, everything within our business literally went 100x. Like it was like gasoline, like you just poured more money on it and everything was just flying through the roof. And what I found was that once I had the order right with our own platform, what made the major difference was other people's platforms. I know a lot of you guys want to get on other people's podcasts and events and things like that. But the problem is if you don't have your internal sequence done properly, it's all just a waste of energy. It's a massive, I see so many real estate investors, they're eager, they're out there, they're spinning their wheels, they're doing so much stuff. But if you don't have a coherent process internally worked out that you've tested and perfected, you're literally spinning your wheels. That was my experience for the first little bit. So obviously podcasts, conferences, meetups, masterminds, other people's social media, you guys are familiar with some of these things, but what you may not know is that when you do it right, like in my context, we've literally had millions of impressions on all the different platforms for free, where people want me, forget about let me, they want me, they invite me to come tell my story. If you think you're not all that interesting, it's just because you've been hanging out with yourself longer than anyone else possibly would. In other words, you're with yourself 24/7, so you don't think you're all that interesting. Maybe some of you think you're a little too interesting, but that's another story. But the truth is that most people struggle with their own personal dialogue because they don't think it's unique because they live with themselves every day. I can tell you for a fact, we've worked with over 500 clients. Yeah, I've yet to meet a client where like, yeah, we can't take this guy on. He's not interesting or she's not interesting. Everybody has a story. Everybody can be investable. You just have to tell the story in the right order and make the story make sense to that makes sense. That's why she does what she does. That's why he does what he does. That's literally where you need to get to. So the next piece is recognition and branding. So as you guys probably know, a brand creates familiarity and trust and a sense of certainty with your investors. Now, when you're branded, you're not going to need to buy leads or investors, and deals literally find you. You literally trip over opportunities. Do you think Robert Kiyosaki or Ken McElroy have troubles finding leads? No, of course not. They probably get chased around the whole conference with deals and all kinds of opportunities. That's the final version of being well branded. So how do you actually create a brand from where you're sitting today? Literally today, because you could be sitting there and going, well, I'm not this person, I'm not this person. So we've distilled it literally to 5 things. The first one is high status. So you need to be perceived as a high status individual. And how do you do that? Well, the easiest way to do it is actually through your thought leadership. Now, you might be sitting there, you're like, well, how do I develop thought leadership? It's simple. You all have competence and experience in something. Whether you've worked for the city for 20 years, whether you've been a police officer for the last 10 years, whether you've been a real estate agent, whether you've been a municipal worker, whatever it is, whatever you've done, you have a unique skill set, experience, contacts, skill set that you develop through that role that gives you that level of competence. Literally, if I pull up someone on stage here who's been a police officer for 20 years, and I ask him about how dealing with people is in a high stress situation, he could probably tell me 100 examples of how he diffused conflict. That's a big deal. Is that a skill set, being cool under fire? Of course it is. That's a great skill set to have as a real estate negotiator. Hostage negotiator, real estate negotiator, right? Kind of, a little bit of the same thing sometimes, right? But you guys understand what I'm saying. Whether you're a construction worker, whether you're a sanitation officer. I have one client who drives trucks. He's a truck driver. So his unfair advantage became, one of his lead magnets became what I learned about real estate after driving a million miles. I'd pick up that book. I did pick up that. You understand what I'm saying? So all of you guys have this. And that brings me to my 4th piece, which is the sense of trustworthiness. So how do you build that trust with people? Because you already have that goodwill with your friends, your family, some of the people that you've already raised money from, and maybe you've tapped out those resources, which is why you're here today. But how do you extend that goodwill beyond those people that have that history with you? And the answer to that is your unfair advantage. Now, your unfair advantage is something that's going to take me a lot more than 19 minutes to walk through, but ultimately it ties back to these things where you can stand in your competence in the one thing that you are uniquely qualified to do, and then extend yourself through a thought leadership position, develop your status and all this. You guys getting this? Is this making sense? So good, because this is the thing that will literally move the needle for you. Like, for those of you who've never raised capital, know this. The reason why the private equity firms are multi-billion dollar companies is because they raised the money first. That's why these guys clean up. Like, we've all been lied to, because everybody says, find the deal and the money will come, right? That's not true. It's just not true. If it was true, the private equity firms wouldn't be raising billion-dollar funds and then buying things, right? They want to show up the other way. The question and the challenge for yourself is, are you currently presenting this absolute best version of yourself right now? Would I, as an investor who doesn't know you, see you the way you want me to see you about your personal brand? Because we all agree to this, that you're going to make a decision whether you buy something from somebody or invest with them within literally the first 30 seconds of meeting them. We all know this, right? And then you're just looking for the technical stuff after to substantiate what you think. So your brand, is it currently telling you that way? And let me ask you another question. If you were able to hire a salesperson that knew everything about your business, knew exactly what your perfect client looked like, qualified, and only brought you the highest quality people to talk to, worked for free, never took a vacation, worked 24/7, never got paid anything, what would an employee like that be worth? It'd be priceless. You can literally have that. I call it your unfair advantage. That's your brand. And you can have this once you get super clear on that, because you get to a point where, like Jeff Bezos says, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's a great brand. So how are people currently talking about you, if at all? The next piece is going to be your goals and your milestones. So there's 3 types of roadmaps you guys are going to want to actually bring all this into focus and action. The first one is called an urgent roadmap. The second is an evergreen roadmap. And finally, you've got your creative roadmap, which is the most fun, but also requires a little bit more forethought. Now, your urgent roadmap is the thing that the deal of a lifetime lands on your plate, but you only have 30 days or 60 days. What do you do? What's 1, 2, 3? What are those like immediate steps that you can literally do? You have to have that automated within your business. Email this, call this, phone call this, follow up this. That's the first piece. The second one is your evergreen roadmap. Those are the things that give you activities that you can do throughout the year to nurture and keep your leads warm. And this is important, guys, because it's going to be the difference between you being able to raise capital from a warm list rather before you actually need it, which is going to be the point of all this stuff. And then finally, your creative roadmap. You guys remember the unfair advantage that I was talking about? This is where you can lean into your thought leadership. You guys have seen TED Talks, right? So TED Talks are an example of thought leadership. The people that are speaking are not talking about any of their actual commercial interests, but because they're successful in whatever their vocation is, that's why they're credible when they talk about stem cell research, or they talk about, trends in the construction industry or things like this. So those are the aspirational goals with a creative roadmap you can go to. Now, those are the roadmaps. Let me give you the GPS. It's called your funds first formula. And here's exactly what we do with this. Now, I mentioned the theory of business constraints, and simply put, what this is when you take a step back and really look at your business, most of your growth is locked in a few key places. And I call that the funds first formula, and I'm going to help you guys unlock it. Now, where this has the most impact for most people is the fact that if you're a salesperson, everything is one sales problem away from being resolved. If you're a marketing person, you think it's just we need more emails. If you're an ops person, you think everyone's full of poo-poo and you're just trying to, straighten everything out, right? So the point is that this model will actually give you that clarity. So the first piece to it is number of contacts. So imagine yourself thinking, I need to raise a certain amount of money. How do you assess where you're going? Well, you start with where you're at. This is the roadmap. The first piece is number of contacts. The second piece is the percentage of qualified contacts that you have in your network. And I'm going to show you guys a practical example of this as well. The third piece is the third piece is the booked meeting percentage. So in other words, a percentage of the people that are qualified, what percentage of them will meet with you? The fourth piece is what's called the show rate. It's shocking, but has anyone had someone tell them they're going to meet with them and they just never meet with them? Has that ever happened to anybody in the room? Maybe once or twice? Yeah. So that's called the show rate, right? Not everybody shows, therefore you have a show rate. The next piece is your closing percentage. Some of you guys think you're fantastic at closing. Some of you feel like you can't close a screen door. That's fine. The point is that that's one of the metrics. That's one of the constraints. And the last one is probably most overlooked is your average commitment size. So in other words, how big are the checks and how many of them you need? I've been at this for 20 years, guys. For me to get these 6 variables in this order took some mental consternation, let's call it that. So let me give you a practical example. Let's just say you're trying to audit your existing network right now, and you feel like you have 1,000 contacts in your network, okay? And you think about 20% of them are qualified. I got the 20% from the fact that 19.5% of American investors are accredited. So, just rounded it up to 20. Booked meetings, in my experience, 35% to 45% is a good range in terms of actually getting those meetings. The next piece is show rate. 75% of those people will show. Closing percentage in my industry, in my business, whenever we train people at this job, in this role, 20% was a good close rate. It was actually a decent close rate. Average commitment, let's say it's $100,000. So right there, when you add all this up, it's $1 million. So you're likely to be able to bring in $1 million. So the question is, if you're sitting there and you're like, Marston, I raised tens of millions of dollars. Okay, cool. 10x everything, 20x everything. The formula doesn't lie. I'm just trying to give you guys a baseline to compare this to so that when you're doing it yourself, it actually all clicks and makes sense. So here's the interesting thing, okay? That's your baseline, whatever it is for you. Here's where this gets really interesting. If you just identify the specific constraints that are really throttling your business, so I'm just going to assume there's 2. and you increase those variables by just 10%. So you increase the percentage of qualified people you're getting in front of, and you potentially increase the quality of the people that you're actually closing. Just by increasing those two variables by 10%, you increase everything by 2.3x. Same people, same humans. If you do one more variable where the minimum investment instead of 100 is 150, I think it was over $3.5 million. If I'm not mistaken. I'm telling you, some of you think you have a sales problem, you have a marketing problem. Some of you are delusional, you think you have a marketing problem, but you have a sales problem, right? It's important because when you want to raise this capital, this will be the difference between you owning the deal and leaving your W-2 or letting another deal go to another guy and picking up a $10,000 referral fee. He who has the gold makes the rules. This is how you make the rules. So the last piece is timing and structure. I want to bring all this together for you guys here today. And this is how you create demand and urgency for your deals. I developed something called the easy method out of pure necessity because there were times where I used to raise money for specific deals. And every time you write that offer, you're on the clock, right? So if you're still in that world, this will literally help you today. And here's a real example. That 144 unit that we bought that I mentioned to you guys earlier, I'm going to use this as a case study to make my point for you guys here exactly. So the E in the easy method is exclusivity. What are 3 things about your opportunity that whether I'm a plumber or an investment banker, I understand the value? Here's some examples. We're buying this property for less than half of what it would cost to build. Okay, well, I understand that there's value. I may not understand how, but I understand there's value there. The rents on this property are $700. The market is $1,050. And all we have to do is X, Y, Z. That's value. This property is just down the street from Hobby International Airport. There's over 30,000 jobs within a 2-mile vicinity. That's valuable. You guys understand? Maybe you're buying in Florida. Maybe it's oceanfront. Maybe you're buying somewhere with a 10-year tax deferral because there was some renovation. You guys all have things within your deals that are making them exclusive, but you're focused on like cap rate compression and yield maintenance and things that are making people's eyes glaze over. They don't want to hear this stuff, especially when you're on a phone call and you're trying to get their attention. I'm going to give you guys the context of that in a second as well. The second piece is abundance. So, hey, John, so glad I got you on the phone. Does that sound like something you're interested in? Yeah, it sounds good. Look, glad I got you on the phone here because I'm actually just flying out to a conference tomorrow and I'm going to be presenting this opportunity. So I'm glad we're talking about it here today. So what have I done? I've shown you that it'd be nice to work with you, but I don't need to work with you. Some of you guys, when you're raising money, it's like Oliver Twist with the bowl. You know, you're showing up, and it's like this energy is like, hey, I need you to bless my transaction. The attitude has to be, this is where I'm. Do you want to come? Like this is where I'm going, right? And the abundance piece is really important. I'll give you guys some examples of that. S is for scarcity. So some of you guys know scarcity, but you're terrified of it because the only form of scarcity some of you guys have understood is time. Because time is always against you. That's another conversation for another day. But the one you're probably not using is the capital. Literally, hey, John, look, really glad that you're interested in this. We're only looking for another $800,000. My challenge is my average client is about 150. So I'm only looking for another 3 or 4 clients. Doesn't that sound better? Or a version of that? So how do you build that into your marketing, into your messaging? How do you put that into the thing where literally people are showing up to your meeting and their thought process isn't if I'm going to work with you, but just can I still get in? And like when can I do this? Like wouldn't you guys rather have those types of meetings with people? That just makes so much more sense. It was always baffling me why people wouldn't want to just incorporate it that way. And then the last piece is your allocations. Look, you're going to have this conversation with people, and throughout the course of the conversation, they're going to have questions about insurance, about lease rates, whatever it is. You answer all those questions, but at the end, you can literally say, look, if all of this worked out, if all of it was what you think it was, is there an amount you'd consider investing? Just ask the question. Yeah, and they're always going to tell you, yeah, I'd probably do $50,000. I'd probably do $200,000.